First and foremost, thank you guys for inviting me out here and coming to listen to what I have to say. When I do the presentation, just bear with me. Usually this adding pressure and bite work is followed by like practical work where we take some dogs out and work them. So there'll probably be a little bit of time difference that'll add up. So I'm hoping that you guys will engage and ask questions at any point. If you feel that something that I'm saying is bullshit, call it out, because if it is bullshit, I want to know as well, so I don't go tell someone else the wrong information. You guys do that for me? Is that favorite for me? All right. Cameron seemed to warm you guys up, so that's pretty helpful. Everyone can hear me? Do I need to put that mic on? No? All right. So a little bit about myself. My name is Michael Nezbeth. I run a company called Grassroots K9. So we do pet dog training, but we also do training for some police and military units. I'm from Canada. Yeah, we have a military. I wasn't in it, but so I have, if you add all the years together that I've worked in law enforcement as a canine handler, it's exactly 0. So I'm not here to tell you guys how to be better canine handlers or help you with your tactics or anything like that. Because if you're asking me about tactics, you guys are screwed. Because I play Call of Duty and that's about it. Yes. A couple weeks ago I did get to throw a flashbang though, so I'm pretty tactical now. So what we do other than just training police dogs and military dogs is we also have a breeding program where we raise up young puppies until they're ready to go to a police agency. So we're a vendor as well, very small scale vendor. At the most dogs that we'll have at a time in the pipeline would probably be somewhere near 10. It's not a very good business structure because by the time we sell the puppies, we've had them for 2 years. It's not to make money off of them. It's actually just about enjoying the process and having a passion for something. And watching them become something that I hope that they can become. The other side to that is there's a lot of puppies that don't become what we want them to become. And having, I think one of the benefits to kind of running the business the way that we do is that the business we don't pay the bills by selling police dogs. So we don't have to end up pushing dogs through that, in my opinion, shouldn't make it through. We've all kind of seen dogs that have maybe made it to getting onto the road that probably shouldn't have been there, right? I don't think, one, it's fair to the handlers, but two, I also don't think it's fair to the dog, right? If they don't want to do it, they shouldn't be there doing it. I feel like the same thing for you guys. If you're a cop and you don't want to do it, you can always be a firefighter. All right, any questions before we get going? So we're going to talk about in this presentation, as it says up there, for those of you that can't read, I'll read it for you. It's about adding pressure in bite work. And what that means to me, it's actually one of my pet peeves when I travel and get to work with dogs in different places. One of the common things that I get asked is to put pressure on my dog, like put some pressure on my dog. And we'll dive into it as we get through some of these slides. What my definition of pressure is may differ from what your definition is, but hopefully by the end of the presentation, we could talk about what pressure is and also how we can use it to benefit us. Sound good? I knew this wasn't gonna work. All right, I'll go push the button. Oh! All right, I like to start these things off with a quote. Smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Yeah? Can I get a head nod?
Yeah, buddy.
Yes.
What's that mean to you?
Oh, God. That if you don't challenge yourself, you're never going to succeed.
Absolutely, man. So, and not just ourselves, I think it's also relative to our dogs, right? If the only time they've seen adversary type behavior is when it counts, and when they need to be able to overcome it, we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that things go well. You guys heard of a term called anti-fragility? No? Probably not, I just made it up. But so what that is to me, anti-fragility is, let's say that we have a vase or you guys call it vase or vase? Vase? Vase, so neither. All right, a vase on the counter up here. Am I French Canadian? Who said that? Go. If we have a vase on the counter here and it falls down onto the floor, traditionally when something's fragile, it hits the floor and it shatters and breaks, right? When something has anti-fragile qualities to it, it means that if I drop the vase from this counter, it hits the ground, it'll crack, and maybe it'll break in some spots. But then when I pick it back up and put it on the counter, and I'm shitty at putting things on counters, obviously, it falls down again. Well, from the same height that it fell from, it's not gonna crack as much anymore. Maybe it won't shatter this time, it'll crack a little bit more. So now I can move it to a higher height. And then I can drop it from there and it's gonna crack, but continuing the progress of, we have to see that add kind of pressure or stress to be able to build resilience to that stress. And over time, we can build more and more resilience. Making sense? I'm sure you guys do that in some of your scenario training, even without dogs involved, right? Like you don't want the first time that you feel those high elements of stress to be on the road where it matters. Making sense? So to me, that's kind of what this quote means, is, when you first get in a boat and the waves are 3 feet, maybe a little bit scary, I get seasick, I hate it. So, but eventually if I continue to do that, well, 3 feet is just my status quo. I'm good with 3 foot. Now we get to 6 foot waves, and so on and so on. Picking up what I'm putting down? Yep. Awesome. Some delay on this, man. All right, next slide. Hot sauce, you talked about hot sauce. You like hot sauce? All right, by the time I'm done with this presentation, I'm gonna try my best to connect these 3 things for you. Hot sauce, masochism, and bite work. Anyone want to take a guess on why or how we're gonna make those connections? If you get it right, I'll give you $100.
Jeez.
No? No one's even gonna take a, you guys aren't risk takers, eh? All right, so by the time we finish this, I should be able, hopefully, to connect it. If not, I just picked random words and put them on a slide, and hopefully I can put them together. It's a good delay. All right. All right, so just a brief outline. We're going to define what pressure is. We're going to talk about different types of pressure. We're going to talk about kind of having pressure with a plan, so we're not just going fingers crossed, hopefully things work out. Talk a little bit about negative reinforcement and operant conditioning. I'm sure it's a good topic for everyone in here, right? You guys love that stuff. We'll talk about classical conditioning, and then we're going to recap and how we connect those 3 topics: hot sauce, masochism, and bite work. Good? This doesn't work well. All right, so what is pressure? Someone answer for me. The answer's up there. Stress. Good. You guys are good. We're making progress. All right, well, perceived by the dog. All right, so to me, what pressure is just a stressor, right? Have any of you asked a decoy or someone that was working your dog to put pressure on your dog? Yes? Yeah? What did you mean by that when you asked the decoy?
We go from different levels of noise, what if they have a weapon hidden with the dog, either soft or hard, depending on where the dog's at.
All right, awesome. Anyone else? What else, when you asked your dog or the decoy to put pressure on your dog, what do you mean by that?
How you look at them.
How you look at
face
them?
Spatial.
Adding stimuli, spatial pressure. Awesome, awesome. So I think that all of those things can be pressure. And Cameron kind of touched on it earlier to me. One of the things that I think is or can be a lot of pressure to most dogs is novel things, right? There's sports. Anyone familiar with PSA or Ricky? Or IGP, French ring. In those sports, they have things that in the sport are deemed as pressure, right? So they have, in PSA they call it a drive. So the dog bites the decoy, and the decoy runs and yells at the dog and says, die, 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 over and over again. But to a dog that's never seen that picture before, that could be interpreted as pressure. Make sense? But a lot of these dogs were raised in that sport, and they've seen that same kind of drive, where they've seen that decoy yelling die and screaming their entire upbringing. So for those dogs, that's not really a novel experience. Making sense? We have dogs, so you asked for, when you said pressure, it was you wanted the decoy to yell or maybe solving. So it's kind of to me, a pretty interesting topic. I geek out over dog behavior stuff all the time, so I hope that you guys find it interesting as well. I think what we do as dog trainers and even as handlers, for the vast majority of your interactions with your dogs, end up becoming problem-solving situations, right? Like we run into issues. I'm going to break down some more general problems that you run into, but what I really want the takeaway to be is that there's systematic approaches that we can take to problem solving as a whole, whether it's detection. Cameron talked about some of the same stuff, whether it's our obedience, whether it's bite work. So we'll give some examples. I'll ask you guys for some examples as well. Everyone's a little bit more talkative today, and we'll kind of just run through it that way. Sound good? Yesterday, I like to start these things off with a quote. That gentleman right there is Albert Einstein. You guys know him? You heard of him? No?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully. All right, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. To me, it really resonated. I think a lot of us that are in the dog world, whether trainers or handlers, like we're doers. Like we like to just do stuff. We'll run into a problem and immediately go into, I'm finding a solution for this right here. Make sense? Have you guys done that before? Yeah? I do it all the time, and I have this quote, and I try my best to remind myself of this because I want to solve it right now. And a lot of the times, most of the times, that never works for me, right? I end up making the wrong decisions, not evaluating the problem that I'm running into in the most appropriate way. So what's unique about my experience is that I get to travel quite a bit and do these seminars and do working seminars. I'm coming out here to do a decoy seminar in May. Some of the unique experience that I get with that is that I have to make real-time decisions on how we're going to deal with some of the issues that manifest, right, with the dogs that we see. With that, I've made some really bad decisions and misdiagnosed some problems, and I've tried to learn from those mistakes. But I have the chance of having my hands on so many dogs and working with so many handlers that I've had to try to come up with a little bit of a system so it's a bit more organized, because my mind's all over the place. Sound good? So we'll walk through kind of what that system is and how I go about trying to break down these problems. Questions so far? No? Good. Oh, no way. All right, quick overview of what we're going to talk about. Introduction, blah, blah. Just a little bit about canine behavior as a whole, looking at what canine body language means or what it doesn't mean sometimes, our misinterpretations of canine body language. Talk about some common problems that we run into in bite work. Maybe I'll ask you guys and you can throw up some ideas, and then as a group we can talk about maybe some of the ways that we will find solutions for them. I like this kind of class to, usually it's the presentation followed by hands-on work. And one of my gripes that I run into with conferences and seminars is like, people can come up here and preach at everyone and say like, do this and do that and do this, but then there's like no follow through, you know? So I want people to at least have something like actionable that they can take home, that you can do with your dogs at your unit or so forth. So we'll try and at least pick a few and walk through what that would look like. We'll talk about failed deployments. Anyone in here have failed deployments, failed engagements with their dogs? Yeah, no one, right? It'll never happen. All right, Cameron kind of talked about some of the steps and ways that he goes about solving common detection problems, so we'll briefly touch on that. Tracking, and we had what was the gentleman's name last night?
Dave.
Dave, French Canadian? He talked about some tracking stuff, really good information there. Our obedience. Then we'll talk a bit about some theories that are related to problem solving as a whole, not directly related to problem solving as a dog trainer, as a dog handler, but kind of adopting them to dogs. We talked about thresholds, 5 W's and an H, and Occam's razor. Questions so far? Good. This is going to be good, guys. I'm really excited. All right. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What are the police K9 roles and responsibilities? What are some of those roles and responsibilities? You guys don't know, eh? Locating tools, for sure. What else?
Public relations.
Public relations. Use of force option.
Knowing the laws, legal standings.
Legal standing. Anything else? Why are you guys quiet today?
Policy, knowing policy.
Staring at me, man. I told you, you're making me uncomfortable. So it's not a trick question. I'm actually just genuinely asking. Sometimes, depending on where I travel to, those roles and responsibilities can change a little bit based off of the location that I'm at. For instance, we have our correction guys back there, questionable group of fellows, but like their roles and responsibilities will be different than some of our regular patrol dogs, right? I did a seminar in Northern Ireland, and they had some of their patrol dogs there, and to be honest, it was dogs that I wasn't really impressed with personally. I was like, oh, why do you guys have these ones? Like, what are you doing with them? And they told me operationally like what their roles and responsibilities are. And then it started to make more sense why they had the type of dog that they had. They had one of their main roles and responsibilities in Northern Ireland is dealing with crowd control at the soccer game riots or rugby games or whatever sport it is they play over there, right? So they were looking for dogs that were a little bit more defensive and reactive and would stay at the end of the leash and just bark and bite anyone that came close to them. That was very effective for what they were doing with their dogs, but for what I'm looking for in a dog, I wouldn't have kept it, right? So it's one of the reasons why I asked this, because we can run into problems like if those dogs in Ireland would be a problem to work where I'm at. Make sense? Anyone have dogs like that here? No failed engagements, no nervy dog you got. Why do you guys even have a seminar for it? Detection's good too, no problems with that.
Oh, that's a mess.
That's a mess. Oh. All right, so the importance of problem solving when it comes to us as dog handlers and dog trainers. First is the adaptability. Cam talked about it yesterday when he was talking about, hey, the rules that you guys are working within change, right? And being able to adjust and adapt to what those rules are and how we're going to be using the dogs. Safety, officer safety, community safety, cover officer safety. Anyone's dog bites cover officers? No, right? Doesn't fucking happen here. Yeah. Reliability, right? It's important, particularly we talk about detection. We want really reliable dogs there. Cam talked about the importance of that, but we want reliable dogs in our patrol profiles as well. In our tracking profiles, knowing that our dogs are reliable, because of having unreliable dogs in any of the profiles we're in doesn't really work to our benefit. Making sense? So we need to be able to problem solve to figure out how we can make our dogs more reliable. Ultimately, just overall enhancing the performance of the dogs, but also the team. Making sense? Being efficient and effective, and then just continuously trying to improve. I think it's super good when we get guys like Ricky that come out and show what some of the possibilities are with obedience and with control for a really high drive dog, right? Anyone in here have verbal outs to recalls off live bites here? No? Was there a point, or is there some of you still feel that it's not something that's possible? I thought that it wasn't possible. Really, when I first started getting into police training, I was like, well, it's not really possible. Once they're there, right? But then seeing guys like Ricky, seeing other people, not just say prove that it's possible, but have the body cam footage available to us, showing you that we could do this. Making sense? So we always want to strive to continue to improve, even if we have really proficient dogs and even if they're good at the job that they're doing. All right, so what are some of the common problems that we run into in bite work?
Outs.
Outs. It's up to you guys analogy on that. Recalls. Someone say recalls?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Shitty biting mechanics, for sure. Anything else you can think of? When we say like outs and recalls, to me, I kind of put those a little bit more into the obedience category. Like a recall is a recall. Now I get what you're saying when you're doing a recall off of a decoy in bite work or calling them back before they get there, for sure. Really big competing motivator. Anything else in bite work that you can think of?
Decoy work.
Engagements and stuff.
Rebiting, decoy work,
Lack of engagement.
lack of engagement. So to me, one of the biggest cancers in bite work, even for really strong dogs, is that I say that we create reactive dogs. And what I mean by that is dogs that are willing to bite and willing to go through the motions of bite work when the decoy does the dance for them. Have you guys ever seen your dogs perform or someone's dog perform? They need the decoy to come out and stare at them or crack the whip or shake the clatter stick, and then the dog turns on. Make sense? To me, that's actually kind of unnatural for a predator, right? When you guys have coyotes here, I'm assuming? Yeah? All right. So when a coyote is hunting a rabbit, does the rabbit try to get the coyote's attention? No, it's dumb, right? Like, a rabbit wouldn't last too long. But what does the coyote do?
Quiet.
The coyote ones that he stalks up, he's the one that initiates the rabbit's response to him, right? Maybe he gets as close as he can, and then he tries to explode and get the rabbit. Then the rabbit notices him, and then takes off and goes into their prey-like movements. Make sense? So a lot of times what we're doing in bite work is that we're creating reactive dogs that are waiting for the rabbit to dance for them first. Making sense? And we have we have a decoy wearing a suit that they've all bit hundreds, if not thousands of times in their life. But if that decoy just stands and looks over this way and you try and send the dog on them, the dog sometimes, I don't even know who you're telling me to bite. You guys ran into issues like that before? Yeah, so I think that that's the biggest, one of the biggest cancers. It also runs true to what Cam's teaching about detection. Right? We need the dogs to be the ones that activate the environment. The environment shouldn't really be activating the dog. Again, we talked yesterday, that's an empowering feeling for a dog, and it's a very natural feeling. All right, detection, what are some of the common problems? You guys had a cheat code. We're gonna see if you're paying attention at Cameron's presentation. False alerts, final train response, anything else?
Like long searching.
Everything I've been doing with narcotics, I've been doing wrong.
Yeah. So everything? Okay. So search patterns, durations in your hunting behavior, absolutely, those are common problems. What about tracking? Issues with tracking?
Same thing.
Common problems. Anyone have a problem with a dog here that tracks? No, no one. I love this. Let's go take a dog out right now.
They want to go visual versus track.
Okay, so they're trying to use their eyes, absolutely. Super common problem, right? Because for dogs, the natural progression for them in their seeking behavior is what? What do they go through? They go eyes, and then when eyes fail them, what do they do? Ears, and then when ears fail them, what do they do?
Run around in circles.
Yeah, well, ears is special. But the natural progression is eyes, ears, nose. So when they do tracking behavior, or we're doing building searches, or whatever it may be, they're gonna check those boxes. Our goal is to try and get them to default to nose faster. Making sense? So their eyes and ears need to fail them. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. What about obedience? What are some of the issues we're running into with obedience? Consistency in from the handler or just dog's performance? Both. Roger. Usually paired together. Anything else? Someone's cycling? Cycling?
From position, trying to win the reward.
Can you explain a little bit?
So when you have a dog in a sit and then you're waiting to give him his yes command, you give him the reward. He gets impatient and then
Tries to do something else?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty operant of the dog, right? So did you guys hear what he said? So a dog, if you're working on a sit and you're trying to build some duration in the behavior, you're withholding that toy or that reinforcer, and the dog says, well, it must not be sit, and then does something else and goes into a down. So super common when we're starting to build duration, yeah. Anything else you can think? We talked about outs, recalls. Anticipation. How's it like displaying itself?
I'd say just kind of like if you're, running patterns, like sit down, stand, something like that, where you have in a sit, and then you have some duration time, and then you go.
Oh, so he's just beating you to what he thinks is coming next. Awesome. Yes, sir?
Like sniffing other dog over, like break off on healing and sniffing other dog over.
Okay, absolutely. So dealing with competing motivators, right? Whether it's dog odors, a cat, a rat. A lot of times the problems that we run into in obedience, when you guys are operational, may be different than your training days, because usually, and I'm not saying this is what you guys do here, but on a training day you may have like, okay, we're gonna do our obedience now on the obedience field, and then after that we're gonna go into a different discipline, we're gonna do detection now, and then we're gonna do building searches now, or tracking now. So we kind of compartmentalize them, and maybe we're really on top of them at the obedience field, but then on our way to our building searches, we ask them to heel, but our mind is on building search, so the dog's getting a little loose in their behavior. Make sense? So consistency, someone talked about it, absolutely. And then to me, it kind of falls in the Bitework category, but a little bit different in my head, is just failed engagements, but no one here has a problem with that, right? All right. You sure?
I'd have to send my dog to the bite before I did that.
Sorry?
I'd have to actually send my dog to the bite first.
Okay. All right. So yeah, failed engagements to me is a pretty common problem. And I want to talk about some of the intricacies of that, right? Like what we're asking of these dogs is actually pretty demanding, right? How long have dogs been domesticated? Pop quiz. Roughly.
400 years.
400 years? Who said 400 years? God damn. All right. No, a little off. So the guesses are, so no one else guesses and gets it really bad like him. No, I felt bad for him. I hit him and smack his hand on that. So the estimates are anywhere from like 20 to 30,000 years dogs have been domesticated. We've been domesticated. Yeah, pretty close. In the grand scheme of how long the world has existed, you're not that far off. Yeah. Listen, you took a guess, no one else did. So yeah, you're ahead of everyone. So they've been domesticated for, let's say, 20, 30,000 years. What happened through that domestication process is a theory, but usually what makes the most sense is that some wild canine species started hanging around with groups of humans, right? Well, to hang around with groups of humans 30,000 years ago, what did that canine species have to behave like? Maybe a little bit, but they have to at least not be trying to eat my children, right? Otherwise, I'm going to kill them. Make sense? So for 30,000 years, intentionally and a lot of times unintentionally, we've been selectively breeding dogs to not bite humans and not show aggression to humans. Make sense? So then we finally get to a point now, we end up here 30,000 years later, you guys in the room, and we have patrol dogs that for the vast majority of their life, we don't want them to bite humans. Right? In their everyday existence, when they're at home with your family, when you guys are on training days with the cover officers, or you guys are running detection, most of their life we don't want them to bite humans. And that's the genetic pool that we selected from was all the aggressive human biting dogs or canines we've killed. or they've died off, or they just stayed in the wild. Now we tell that dog with all that genetic history, okay, actually, there are gonna be like a really small percentage of times that I want you to bite someone. But I also, like, I need you to bite them, but also bite them with the mechanics that I want you to bite that person with. And like, while you're doing that, I also want you to bite them in the spot that I want you to bite them on their body. And then since you're there and we're talking about it, I also want you sometimes, I'm gonna send you after him, but then he's gonna put his hands up and I'm gonna tell you to come back and not to bite him. Or maybe I'm gonna let you bite him and then you're gonna have it for maybe 5-10 seconds. You may start to really enjoy it, and then I'll tell you to come back to me. When you look at it like that, it's a pretty complicated thing, right? Especially when we're getting to, hey, you're getting really close to a bite, never mind. So it's pretty challenging. And I think that the dogs that are doing it and are capable of doing it are unicorns. And we have to kind of respect those dogs and honor those dogs, because not just do I want you to bite someone, but I want you to bite someone that's actually also trying to hurt you. Someone that's not afraid of you. Because that takes it to a whole nother category now, right? It's not easy, but it's easier for the dogs to engage with someone that is the scared rabbit, running away from them, right? What if you get the guy that's hopped up on some drugs and thinks that he's gonna eat the dog? Like, hey dog, go fight that evil dragon in there. But only 1% of the time. You don't have to do it all the time. It's pretty challenging, man. So when we have failed engagement, there are things that we need to look at on a deeper level. First and foremost, to me, unfortunately, there's one thing that we can't fix, and that's just genetics. So like, does the dog genetically have it? And if they don't have it, no amount of training that we're gonna do is gonna turn that dog into the dog that we want them to be. Making sense? My wife, I'll give you an example. My wife is 4'11", 5 foot if she's here. She's 4'11". And if she trained twice the time and put in twice the dedication that LeBron James put into as being a basketball player, she still wouldn't make it to a D2 college team. Make sense? So we have to, first deal with our genetics, and we'll dive a little bit into that as well. Questions about that? So 400 years, you were closer than anyone else. All right, so these are my problem-solving steps that I follow, regardless of what the profile is or the problem that I run into. So we use this same process for, I said yesterday, we do pet dog training also at my company. This is the same process that we follow for them. But there's a trick in these steps, because there's a step that I didn't put up there, and it's my step 0. Anyone want to take a crack at what they think step 0 is?
Cause the problem.
Cause the problem? Who said that? Cause them? No, I don't want. I try not to cause them, but you're actually kind of close.
Encounter a failure.
Encounter a failure, maybe.
Genetics.
Genetics, maybe. No, you're wrong. Sorry? No, remember, these are my steps to solve the problem.
See the problem in action.
So I would put that as my finding the cause or identifying the problem. Step 0.
Problem.
The problem? Kind of. All right. 400 years. No. So my step 0 to problem solving is prevention. Right? Prevention solves a lot of problems for us. The issue with prevention is it's not really measurable. We don't know what we've prevented. Making sense? I'll give you an example with pet dogs. So you get a new puppy and you bring them home, and we say, hey, pet owner, we're gonna work on crate training with your dog. You put him in a crate, and they're like, well, crate training's cruel, I don't wanna lock my dog away. Cool, it's your puppy, you live with him, do what you want. Well, that puppy, instead of us preventing him from learning bad habits, starts to chew on shoes at the front door. chew on the baseboard, jump on guests when they come over, piss wherever he wants in the house. You understand? Now, are there going to be puppies that haven't been crate trained and decide not to do any of those behaviors? Absolutely. But if we created that dog and controlled his environment, he would have never learned that in his mind the baseboard tastes like filet mignon. Make sense? So being able to prevent them from even having the experience to learn that maybe that thing is fun, or maybe I have an aversion to something in the environment, is my step 0 of problem solving. It's just hard because it's not really a tangible thing. We can't say that we look at all of this stuff that I prevented. Making sense? Make sense? Awesome. Questions so far about step 0? No? All right, so step 1, kind of self-explanatory, and what we'll do at the end of this, I'm going to pull this slide back up and we'll try and run through a couple of problems in here. But step 1, self-explanatory, identifying the problem. How do we identify the problem?
Have the failure.
Have the failure? Yeah, so, well, it's something that makes us say, well, here's a problem.
Ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions or the dog's behavior. I'll give you an example. So, how many people, when they get to the door threshold and start making canine announcements, the dogs start losing their shit? Pretty common problem, right? Well, we've identified what the problem is. I get to the door threshold, make announcements, my dog turns into a psycho. Okay. Caveat to all of this, I'm going to use the canine announcements as an example. But again, reminder, I'm just a dog guy, I'm not the dog guy. So that maybe there's other solutions that don't involve dog behavior. We'll run with this as an example. So identify my problem as my dog losing his shit at the door. Step 2, I'm going to try and find the cause. So what do we think the cause of that is?
See the volume of your voice?
Sorry?
The volume of your voice or the...
Yeah, so like context cues, right? Because maybe if the volume of my voice is loud, but I'm not saying those same words and I'm not at a door threshold with him in a down, he may not just start barking and losing his shit, right? But the context cues, so we'll say loud voice, at a door threshold, and maybe some guys waiting in a stack or something there. Those big context cues for him. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the cause though.
Allowing it to
Those can be the triggers.
Allowing it to happen, thinking that's the way he gets to go.
Allowing it to happen, okay, yeah. I would also say probably where I would lean towards the cause being is anticipation. Right, Cam talked about dogs building up those big levels of dopamine and trying to contain them in those moments and it being really hard. There's gonna also be problems that we can sit down and talk about what we think the causes are forever, but we'll never really know the hard evidence of what the actual cause is until maybe another 30,000 years of evolution and the dogs can start talking to us. Until they can say, hey, when you did this, that caused me to do this. We still have to try and make some assumptions. Making sense? So we can guess. What happens a lot in this stage, and we run into it with pet dogs all the time, is people can get caught up on what is the cause. What is the cause? Well, it can be useful information if we have it, but a lot of the times it's not necessary. Making sense? Kind of? All right, so we'll say we assume the cause may be anticipation and be based off of reinforcement history, right? All right, then we got to create a plan of action. How the fuck are we gonna do that? Someone tell me, bro. It's my first time seeing these slides. So.
Come up with a plan. I mean, like how I address that problem, I take that dog out of that picture. Like I tell people to just take their dog out in the middle of the field.
Okay, so perfect. We'll run with that. We have a plan of action, and we're going to go there. A part of my plan of action, I also want steps or potential steps to progression. Right, so that we'll say that's my first step. Let's go into the field and make canine announcements, and we'll see how he responds. Some dogs will be like, bro, are you dumb? This is an open field. I know we're not doing that, whatever. other dogs are going to immediately go into losing their shit. So we can kind of work our plan from there. So we create a big in-depth plan of action. Step 4, well, a plan without action is not a plan of action, it's just a plan or a hope. So we have to implement our plan. When we implement our plan, it's never going to go as our plan says, right? You have a plan. We have a saying at Grassroots K9, it's very eloquently put, and it's fucking dogs. Because as soon as you think you got something figured out and okay, we're on the right path and this is going to change, dogs do what dogs do, and it's some time for fucking dogs, right? So we also, when we're doing implementing our plan and creating our plan, we want to create kind of contingencies. Well, if dog does this, this is how we're going to deal with it. Making sense? And I'm going to dive a little bit more into detail about those plans in a minute. The 5th step to me, which is super important, is measuring our progress or lack thereof. How do we do that?
Periodically check him at the door and see how he's doing, if he's gotten better.
Testing these.
Kind of. That's a little bit more testing than I would say measuring. Measuring our progress. You guys all do it. Or at least elements. Sorry?
Observe it.
So observe it. Well, your training logs. Right, our training logs. What do we put in our training logs? How do we measure progress? How do we measure lack of progress? Video. Right? I like to videotape my sessions because I'm an emotional creature with my dog. And I'll think in my mind, I just had a horrible training session with this dog. And then I look back on the video, and it was better than the training session I had before that I thought was a great training session. Or vice versa. Like, oh, this was such a good session that I had. And it was a shit session. Because my dog hates me, and I hate her. Making sense? So when I'm measuring progress, I also try and, so video, training logs, but my training logs need to have as much quantifiable data as possible. So I try and put numbers to things that I can put numbers to. So dog at the door, or we're in the field with the dog. I'm going to pick a field that's close to a structure where there's a threshold. I'm going to say, okay, well, when I was 30 yards away and I made my canine announcements at medium volume, I had no response. My dog didn't lose their shit. Make sense? So I have medium volume. Again, a little bit subjective, but I have the distance of 30 yards away. And I'll put dog maintain the down position for 20 seconds in total. And during that down position, I was reinforcing with food every 5 seconds. Now that data means something a little bit more, right? I have points of reference versus training session was good, dog didn't bark, made canine announcements. A little bit more difficult to process. What's unique about when we're taking notes, it's like your detection notes. Like you guys probably put like of the target odor that was out, yeah? Yes, no? Like things like that. You try and make it, do the same for all of your behaviors. Put those numbers in because when we're doing our training notes at Grassroots K9, there's multiple trainers that are working with the same dog. So when I say the dog did good, also the next trainer that might think that my good is their shit. Make sense? Yes, no? Some of you are looking cross-eyed at me. It's the corrections guys. All right, questions about measuring progress or lack thereof? Making sense? Steps kind of making sense so far? Awesome. All right, so when we're trying to put our plans together or deal with our problems, I like to establish very specific criteria. Again, one, there's multiple trainers going to be working with the same dog, but two, it gives me, as the handler and as the trainer, something specific that I'm working on. The second thing is I try and break down the behaviors, right? So dog losing his shit at the threshold, that's our problem. Gentlemen, who said into the field? 400. All right. So part of breaking that behavior down is figuring out, okay, some of the triggers are probably me being loud, me being at a door threshold, the context cues are of other cover officers waiting there, maybe the dog sees in training a decoy walk into the building. So we break down those individual slices of the pie and start to work our way, exposing the dog to those pictures in a controlled manner, where it's not the whole problem at once. Making sense? I think a lot of times we're well-intended, or we have really good intentions, but no one in here has failed engagements. But sometimes what you'll hear is like, hey, if you've had a failed engagement on the road, bring that back to training day. I think the intentions are absolutely in the right spot, but if we recreate the exact scenario in training day where you failed on the road, why are the results going to be different? Make sense? So being able to break it down into sections of what happened help us overall with dealing with the problems, but can also help us identify where those triggers are or where the problems occurred at. Right? If we go into the field and make announcements, the dog doesn't bark. Okay, we make announcements in the field with really, really loud announcements and the dog doesn't bark. Okay, maybe the volume of these announcements isn't where the catalyst to this behavior is coming from. Make sense? Now we go to the door and we whisper our announcements and he loses his shit. Oh, now we figured out kind of where we're running into this issue. Yeah? And what I try and do is choose also a replacement behavior. So we have, Dan, you said you do some pet dog stuff, right? Yeah, anyone else do pet dog training in here? If you don't, I'm telling you right now, if you want to be a really good canine handler and trainer, even if you hate dogs, do some pet dog training for a little bit. It will improve your skill set. But let's say I have a pet dog client whose dog bum rushes the door when guests come over. Right? I would use a different example, not my yelling no at the dog. But I say, okay, well, let's fix this problem. First and foremost, how are some ways that we could address that problem?
Prevention.
Correction?
Prevention.
Prevention, for sure. Step 0 is prevention, so we can lock them away. Is that, at this point, is that addressing the problem, though? No, so it's a little bit of management, and sometimes there are problems that we have to manage. So let's say that we actually want to address the problem. How do we address that?
Place board.
Place board can be, absolutely. Is a place board addressing the problem, or is it management? So it can, if we just do place board, we're still kind of just managing them. Like it's just like putting them in their crate before the guests come over. I'm not opposed to those things, but I think if we add the place board or add sending the dog into their crate as a part of our replacement behaviors, that can help us. But how do we address, hey, grandma comes over, you bum rush the door, you're gonna knock her off her walker.
What if you don't let that person come in?
Yeah, fuck grandma, she, sorry, go ahead. I know, but it felt like a good, you threw me an alley-oop. 400. 400-year-old grandma, okay.
You have your guest wait until the dog is neutral before they come in the door.
Okay, that's a way we can work on that. So grandma waits at the door, the dog takes 5 minutes, settles down, grandma opens the door, and let's hypothetically, we're making up Fluffy's behavior right now. Fluffy grandma goes back up. Well, Fluffy fucking flung her outside already. Okay, that's a solution. Kill grandma. So what I would say is we have to also add in some type of punitive measure for bum rushing grandma at the door. If we just stop at the punitive measure and we just we just correct Fluffy from rushing out the door, then Fluffy can also get stuck in limbo, right? And say like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and can create replacement behaviors on their own. Sometimes those replacement behaviors don't matter and we're okay with them, but sometimes we're not super happy with them. Bum rushing the door, sometimes dogs, we correct them, and if we don't give them the replacement behavior of sending them to the place, or sending them to the crate, or a spot, something, they can displace that and grab a shoe and run around, or go into some other bit. Sometimes they just sit in limbo. But we want to control as much of the outcome as we can, right? So I say, hey, you can't do that, but you definitely could do that. right? It makes it a clearer path to success for the animal. Making sense? Questions about that? The last part to this establishing specific criteria is we need to have an environment that's going to be conducive for what we're trying to recreate, whether we're going to be reinforcing, making it happen more, or punishing. Make sense? So the first day that I would work on Fluffy bum rushing the door when guests come over, it wouldn't be at my birthday party. Right? Where I'm going to have a lot of guests coming over and not a lot of time to spend focusing on Fluffy. I would try and recreate the scenario with much lower levels of arousal in Fluffy and work our way up to my birthday party. Making sense? How can this be relevant to what you're doing then? Like, I don't know, but I know how to train a dog not to bum rush the door anymore.
Essentially teaching them how like channel their drive in a certain way. Right?
Absolutely. Put that, I'm okay with a really high state of arousal as long as we can control it and use it in an effective manner. When you want to lose your shit at the door threshold because we're making announcements and you're so excited to go search, I'm not mad that you're excited to go search. I want you to be excited to go search. I just don't want you to get so excited that you grab the guy that's standing in the stack, or you're screaming your head off because you want to make entry. Maybe the guy inside needs to hear the K9 announcements. Maybe I need to talk to the guys that are here with me. Making sense? So we need to figure out ways of saying, no, you can't do that, but this is what I want you to do instead. In really high states of arousal, that can be very hard to get to. Right? We have dogs that probably lose their shit at door thresholds, and people have just tried to correct them to stop it. Has it worked? Usually the answer is no. Right? We talked yesterday about some dogs liking spicy food. Right? Those corrections sometimes in those moments on a prong collar, on a slip lead, even on an e-collar, can just be increasing the levels of dopamine dumping in the dog, and it's just spicy food now for them. They're like, cool, I like this. All right, so we're gonna break down now how generally I'll go into building a little bit of that training plan or that progression plan. So we have to understand our canine body language and learning theories. It's not canine learning theories, but just learning theories in general, because that's gonna help us formulate our plan, but also we need to be able to read dogs. Easier said than done. So we'll go from here. You guys familiar with the Skinner box? Yeah, some of you? No? So a Skinner box was designed by a psychologist named B.F. Skinner. And B.F. Skinner is commonly referred to the godfather of operant conditioning. You guys somewhat familiar with operant conditioning? Talked about it a little bit yesterday. So what the Skinner box is, the actual Skinner box, is this environment that he created that has a speaker, a light, a lever, food dispenser, and an electric grid. And what he would do is teach the rat operantly in the initial stages to walk over and pull that lever, and then you get fed. Making sense so far? So the light would go on or the speaker will go off. That would be a signal to the rat of the game is on. The rat would, maybe the first time, accidentally bump into the lever, and then food came out. And the rat's like, oh, maybe I'm onto something. Right? The light goes on. Next time he walks over, maybe with a little bit more intention, this time he pulls the lever and food came out. Until the behavior became very predictive and he trained the rat, pull the lever equals food. Making sense? What's important about Skinner's box is that in the initial stages, and Cam talked about this in his detection work as well, is that there weren't 67 different options of levers for the rat to pull, and we were waiting for him to pull the right lever. Make sense? It started with one lever. That's the only option that's there. Eventually, if we were trying to teach this rat to be a trick rat that we traveled the world with, and we got it to only pull levers in a certain order, how would we do that? I want you to pull the red lever first, then the blue lever, and then the green lever. But there's 10 different levers in there. How would we do that, theoretically?
Start with one.
Start with 1, okay. Sorry?
Slowly introduce positive consequences.
So we can, I think that should be a part of the learning phase, but it's important when we start introducing that. Sorry, someone else said something?
I just thought maybe slowly introduce each lever that you want them to pull.
Absolutely. Well, I would introduce each lever that I wanted the rat to pull, and I would also introduce the wrong choices. When the rat initially made the wrong choices, I wouldn't punish him for it or positively punish him for it, because what's going to happen or what can happen.
He won't do it at all.
Sorry?
He won't do it at all.
Yeah, he's like, you know what doesn't get me positively punished? Touching fucking anything. Right? And that's called learned helplessness. So we don't want them to go into learned helplessness. So we would add the progressions when we established really predictable behavior. Then when we're just kind of fine tuning it, I would punish him positively punish for the wrong choices. Making sense? Just not too soon. Like a detection dog. If he goes to the wrong box and we fry him on an e-collar, you might just say, you know what? Sitting in a patrol car is better than detection work. Making sense? All right, briefly we'll talk about operant conditioning. We touched on it yesterday. So we have 4 quadrants in operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is learning by consequence. Consequence not meaning bad, consequence just meaning something that happens after the behavior. Making sense so far? So I'm teaching a puppy how to sit. They put their butt on the ground. A consequence to them putting their butt on the ground is I add a piece of food to their life, right? What quadrant of operant conditioning would that be? Positive reinforcement, right? I add something that makes a behavior more likely to happen again in the future. Picking up what I'm putting down? All right. I know the wording that they chose to use on this was intentionally done to screw us over because it's confusing. But once you kind of think of it in that manner, it makes it a little bit easier. So then we have positive punishment. What's positive punishment?
Adding something to
Decrease.
decrease behavior.
Who said it? E-collar.
Like a stem or correction.
So a tool can be utilized in a quadrant, but a tool itself can't be a quadrant, right? So positive punishment is we add something that makes a behavior less likely to happen again in the future. Making sense? Someone have a hand up? All right, negative reinforcement. What's that?
Take away.
We take something away. What do reinforcements do? Reinforcers do?
To try to make it happen more.
To make it more likely to happen. That one sounds a bit confusing, right? Yeah, anyone think of an example of negative reinforcement? Ricky was talking about it yesterday.
If you're using the e-collar and you take away the stim, if you're using that for that.
Yeah, as a result to the behavior, right? Always, there you go, Ricky, you got one. So it's always any of these quadrants are always a result of the behavior, right? What the behavior happened, then what happened after the behavior. Otherwise it starts getting even more confusing because then you say, well, I had to add the e-collar to be able to take it away, right? Like, oh shit, now we're down a rabbit hole. But just think about what your target behavior is, what happens immediately after that target behavior. Making sense? Then we have negative punishment. What's negative punishment? Come on, paying attention. We talked about it yesterday. Calculator, iPad.
They've taken away something good.
Sorry?
Taking away something they like.
Yeah, taking away access to something that they like to do what? Make a behavior less likely to happen again in the future. All right, so when I'm building my basis of my training plan or how I want to move forward, I start with 2 categories and I say, hey, I don't like that Fluffy loses his shit at the door threshold. Making sense? Well, if I don't like a behavior, what 2 quadrants does it have to fall in? I don't like it. I want it to decrease the likelihood of it. No. Punishment.
Yeah.
Right? So I say, I'm probably going to be dealing with this behavior in my punishment quadrant. I'm not sure which punishment quadrant yet, but I'm probably going to be dealing with it in there. Well, what behaviors do I like or do I want Fluffy to do at the doorway?
Be quiet.
want him to stay quiet. What else? Maybe I want him to lay down, right? So I'm gonna take those and put those in my reinforcement categories right now. Really basic outline for a training plan. I'm not sure which one I'm gonna, or how I'm gonna do these things yet. Making sense? Then I say, well, what does Fluffy like? What does Fluffy not like? That also now starts to give me ideas for tools that I can use to use these quadrants with Fluffy. Making sense? So I break those down and I actually write them down because it helps me organize my thoughts a bit. Making sense? All right. The problem is we also have classical conditioning. Talked about this yesterday as well. What is classical conditioning? Basically, it establishes involuntary behavior associated with cues. Remember the bell and the dog food? Well, if it's an involuntary behavior, it can be a problem for us then, right? Because operant conditioning, when I'm using operant conditioning, it's assuming that the dog is having the cognitive ability to process what I'm doing. Make sense? That dog needs to be aware that it's doing it. Like if I used a bell and did all of this to get the dogs to drool, and then I rang the bell and they started drooling and I fucking fried them on an e-collar, is that fair to the dog? No. Make sense? Well, how do we get to the problem of the dog barking at the door threshold? What are some of the issues with, or some of the potential causations for the dog barking at the door threshold?
You told him good job the first time you did it.
Yeah, and definitely the first time he's done it. And also, how long is your guys' handlers courses out here?
12, 14 weeks.
12 to 14 weeks. It's a short time to probably get a lot of building searching in, right? And of course you're doing other things, but we have so many repetitions of Fluffy getting to the door threshold, seeing that entire picture, all those context cues, us making canine announcements, ringing the bell, and then giving him something that he really loves to do. A predator loves to hunt, they love to seek, and he gets to go in there and bite. Make sense? So through unintentionally, a lot of the problems that we run into with dogs, we've classically conditioned the problems. So now Fluffy is at the door threshold 1,000 reps later, screaming his mind off, but it's actually not even really realizing that he's doing it because it's a reflexive, involuntary response. Is that making sense so far? Kinda? So we know that we can't just immediately, in my opinion, go to operant conditioning to deal with this problem now, because it's not really fair to the animal. He doesn't realize he's doing it. It's like me punishing you for your heart beating. Your heart's beating, bro. Right? So how do we, if I wanted to make that bell not mean anything to the dog anymore, how would I do that?
Every time he barks, you take 4 steps away from the door.
Okay.
Till he stops barking.
Or ring the bell and not give him.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I would first, we have to kind of uncondition what we've done already, right? And that alone isn't going to solve the problem, right? If I just take them to the door thresholds, make announcements, and then they go back to the car, and I do that over and over again, that by itself isn't going to solve the problem. But what I'm trying to do in those moments is get the dog to finally get to a point where I violated that contract with him enough that he goes to lose his shit and he says, wait a minute, bro, are you doing one of those pretend ones again? And when I have him at that point, now what do I also have?
Attention.
Sorry?
Marketing or reward the behavior.
Yeah, kind of. I at least have his brain here now. Because now he's thinking, is this a fake one or a real one? Well, now he's conscious of it and it's not involuntary responses anymore. Making sense? So then I get you to that point of we're not at just purely involuntary responses, and now I can start going to my operant conditioning. Make sense? Kinda? A little bit? Someone say no, they don't get it. You know?
It seems like a long way to get to fix that problem.
It's absolutely a long way. It's a very long way to get there. And in my opinion, you can make really great strides, but sometimes that level of arousal is hard to compete with. But there's other things that I'll do to fix it. So once we get them to that state, we've kind of unconditioned those K9 announcements at the door threshold. Actually, you know what? Let me show you this video really quick. It's back when I was crippled.
Did you see this?
We watched SpongeBob in the kennel too. You guys see him flinch a little bit there before? Snowing again, eh? That diversion right there. Oh, it's snowing. Basically, James Bond.
What are you doing? I'll see you dead on your
Alright, we're gonna test out to see if our bell is classically conditioned. If not, we're gonna have to do some more reps, but we're gonna try it out. I just went to sleep on it every 20 minutes ago.
So when we classically condition things,
Kid does the dodgeball.
yeah.
He turns a light. So the kid would turn a light on, and hit his friend every time the dodgeball. After a while, he turns the light on, the kid ducks immediately, just like that. It's another fun one. Go have some fun on YouTube. Do that game, and you'll see.
There's another guy that does it with like an airsoft gun. My wife said I couldn't do that. But I do that video one to show it becomes reflexive responses. That kid has way less reps with the bell sound and that water spray than all of your dogs do with announcements to building searches, right? We can classically condition desirable things, or we can unintentionally classically condition undesirable things. Making sense? So let's say now that we've moved from the point of classical conditioning, I have the dog's brain with me now. We talked yesterday about identifying thresholds. I like this graphic a little bit better. So when I'm working up to now, Fluffy wants to lose his shit at the door. I still need to get to a point. So on here, it's a boogeyman. The boogeyman doesn't necessarily have to be something bad or scary. It can be something that brings a dog to a high state of arousal, okay? But if I get to the door for Fluffy when I'm first starting, I'm gonna be over his threshold. So what happens there is he's still not capable to process the information that I'm giving to him because he's in such a high state of arousal. Make sense? If I'm 100 yards away from the building, Fluffy doesn't even think he's gonna be going to do any building searching things. So when I'm trying to counter condition or work through my processes, I'm not working on it because he doesn't even notice or have the hope for building search. Make sense? What I need to do is to find that working spot at threshold where the dog starts to realize, oh, we might be doing the building search thing right now. Make sense? Where he has hope for it, but he's still at the point where his brain is still here with him. And then I need to do my repetitions over and over and over and get myself closer and closer to what the full picture of my canine announcements are gonna look like before I send the dog into the building. Making sense? In this stage, I'm a huge fan of using food reinforcements. If we're battling with really high states of arousal, and we have these crazy Malinois that lose their nuts over a ball or a tug or whatever it may be, and we're using a very high state of arousal to try and counter condition, sometimes it can also be counterproductive because they just take out that state of arousal on the item. Make sense? Yeah? So I like to use food and I like to use fixed ratios of reinforcement because in these moments, I don't want it to be like the casino slot machine. I kind of want it to be like the vending machine. I want it to become pretty boring for the dog. I call it like a lot of this, I talked with a couple of guys yesterday, and a lot of the dogs that we have for patrol dogs are, I call them like heavy metal dogs, right? They just want to bang their heads and do gangster shit all the time, right? But what we really need for the vast majority of what we're doing with them is dogs that prefer church music. Make sense? So these sessions need to be boring and need to be church music sessions. I need to take you out of the car, I have your food in a pouch with me, and we're gonna maybe get up to the door, actual door threshold eventually. I'm gonna put you in a down, and I'm gonna give you food. And you're gonna stay in that down, I'm gonna give you another piece of food. And I kinda want them to get to the point of, this is kind of boring. And I say, yeah, it is kind of boring, bro, because this is what life is for the most part. Make sense? Remember, thresholds isn't just the distance from the building, it's our volume, it's the cover officers, it's the other thing that I like to do eventually is when they really start to figure it out is I let them see the decoy go into the building. They really figure it out, awesome. I'll let the decoy walk out of the door threshold, look at the dog, walk back in. Oh, good, you're still in your down, here's some food, here's some food. Making sense? And
Can I ask
slow.
real quick?
Yeah.
How many of you guys want that other officer that shows up on the scene screaming and yelling and acting like a fool? Or you want calm breeds calm? What he's talking about is you can come into the game intense, but you're calm, you're focused. What he's getting at is the same thing in the dog. If your dog comes in, that is the same as that officer that shows up and you're like, get the fuck off my scene. Because they're too worked up, they can't think straight, they're in their head, the arousal level isn't allowing them to think something properly. So look at your dog as your backup officer. If that dog is out of control or can't think straight due to the way he's bringing right here, that's a problem. But calm breeds calm. That's the number one saying with routines. Calm breeds calm. Do your job. Focus on the one thing. Get it done. If you're hectic and stressed, and you're doing that without even being purposely stressed, imagine what happens when we add stress to it, to an animal, in this case, who's already arousal levels too high. So he's bringing up, this is, whether it be, like he said, patrol, this is the biggest thing in detection. The dog comes in hot, and they can't focus because they're so excited to go do the thing, they're not really great at it. He's bringing up critical points for tactical type things too.
Yeah, see, you guys didn't know I was a tactician in this bitch. Yeah. But don't worry, next is the flash bang somersault slide. But, so absolutely, we want like, and like traditionally, you guys have probably heard it like, hey, hype your dog up, speak him up, make your announcements and pat him up. Bro, no amount of patting your dog on the side, if that dog doesn't have gangster shit in him, is gonna make him a gangster. You got it or you don't, bro. Like, you shouldn't have to be there to be his doing a pep rally for him. Make sense? All right, questions about this? Yep.
Just from in that example of the dog barking or having multiple issues, do you think it'd be beneficial, so that you're at the point where now they're being quiet at the door, to allow them to search, but do like a blank search, so you're not always finding the guy that you're gonna bite?
Yeah, absolutely. So my progressions would be, like I said, decoy can pop out, can go back in. Eventually, I need to get to the point where I'm sending the dog into the building to search, but the first couple ones are gonna be blank searches. Is anyone gonna be offended if I say something offensive? I don't care, I'm going back to Canada tomorrow. All right, I call it like, when the decoy is popping out and then going back in, what is that doing? it's anticipation for the dog, right? We're now playing with increasing a little bit more of his anticipation. And that's the name of the game. I need to get you to say, oh, you're about to get it, buddy. And then I say, sight. Make sense? I had a slide, my wife made me delete it. But it was called K9 edging. I should have kept it, right? Yeah, you heard that? But so that we need to play with those anticipation levels of the dog. We need him to think, because if we just get them out and they are under the expectation of, well, this is that boring shit that we're never gonna, I kind of want them there a little bit, but they need to also be able to do it when there is hope to go do that really fun thing. Make sense? So my progressions are just that. Slowly working my way up to it. A lot of times when they get into the building and actually get to go bite someone and get those demons out, it can almost become easier on the dogs because they got to get it out of their system. If I want to really challenge the dog, well, then I need to K9 edge them. Sometimes say, hey, you think you're gonna do bite work? You're gonna do this building search, right? Yeah, it looks so fun. Oh, you're about to get sent. And then the guy comes out and surrenders and say, oh, sorry, Fluffy. We're gonna do detection now. How many of your dogs would have a problem with that? Right? But we can work, they all can do it. We can work them up to it. We just have to be systematic with how you get there. Making sense? Thank you for the question. Because you let me say my K9 edging. All right, counter conditioning. We don't need to really go over this in too much detail because we covered it yesterday. Remember the sunny rabbit? Well, today is with that because variety is... Sorry? Absolutely. Right? Like gunfire is a big... How many people's dogs in here hear gunfire go off and want to lose it? They get really excited. It's probably can be a little bit detrimental, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to, at times, it's my opinion, actual neutrality is a very hard thing to build. Because dogs, generally speaking, if we're trying to build associations, it's like this thing is desirable or it's undesirable from the dog's eyes. So my overall goal for every dog is gunfire neutrality. Counter conditioning actually isn't going to make gunfire neutrality, but I can start bringing down the level of arousal. But they're still always going to have an element of arousal there. Make sense? Yeah? No?
It makes sense, but it can pop up again, correct?
Absolutely. It can spontaneous, what's spontaneous? Recovery. It can pop back up.
You can't get away with them. You have to have them here all the time.
Yeah, you know why?
Yeah.
We know why it can pop back up? Because they're fucking dogs. They gotta make our life difficult.
Yeah, that doesn't help you when you're shooting things.
Absolutely. So the ideal picture is a neutral dog to gunfire. Again, a tactician, as you guys. All right, quick questions for you. Just everyone as a group can kind of yell it out. What's this dog's attitude or overall demeanor feel like to you? What do you guys get from it? Happy, content, everything looks good. What about this little sketchy guy? Scared?
Suspicious.
Some of your patrol dogs look like that when you get them out the car? What about the German Shepherd? Gangster? You got gangster? Resource guardian?
Your daughter says.
So, oh, I know.
Happy dog.
Yeah. What about number 4? It's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of scared. Looks scared. Defensive. Okay. So we can kind of look at these things and all have different, somewhat slightly different opinions, right? There are some that are very obvious to us. This dog over here on the left-hand side, that's the left. It looks generally like it's in a good mood to us, right? The other one looks like it's pretty scared and doesn't want to be there. The German Shepherd, most people, someone said gangster. People said, what else do we got? Sorry? Hot stuff? Hot sauce, okay, hot sauce. Looks also like, but looking at that picture, we don't see his whole body. How do we know the rest of that German Shepherd's body isn't tucked like that dog on the very right-hand side?
His ears are up.
His ears are up, so definitely, whenever I'm looking at body language, again, until the dogs develop the ability to talk with us, we still have to make some assumptions, right? Whenever I'm looking at canine body language as a whole, I try not to just look for one marker, right? We've all heard like, oh, the dog's tail's wagging, he's happy. Well, I'm pretty sure everyone in here knows that that's not the case, right? But we need to look for multiple signs. What about hackle standing up? Have you guys heard hackle standing up means what? Dog's defensive?
Yep.
Yeah, but not always. Sometimes dogs hackle stand up when they're in a high state of arousal, right? Or what about when a dog's biting and the dog's vocal while it's biting? Have you guys heard that sometimes the dog's feeling a bit nervy? Yeah, sometimes that's the case. Other times there's some German Shepherds that literally load and leap right before they punch in on the bite, right? So it doesn't, we have to try and look at the entire picture of canine body language and not just pick particular points. Make sense? Yeah? I was going over the slides before I came here when my wife made me delete my favorite slide, canine edging. And my 4-year-old daughter was in the room, and I asked her, and she was like, yeah, this one's happy, that one's scared, that one's mad, that one's happy. And I was like, you sure you want to, that one's happy? And she's like, yeah. I was like, all right, you got to figure that out. She's a little gangster too, so. All right, have you guys heard of the brittle principle? No, so it's not a dog training principle per se, but what it means is there are certain things where minimum input gives us maximum output. And what I kind of mean by that is like there are adjustments that we can make in our training or dealing with problems that adjusting really small things can give us big payout with the dogs. Make sense? Can we think of any examples like that? I think Cameron gave us some really good examples today with detection. You guys are running your detection scenarios anyway. Well, why don't we go to adjust one really small thing? Now it's double blind. Right? Like if we do just that little thing, it can pay huge dividends in the future. Making sense? So I look at like the Pareto principle as like return on investment. What are the things that I can change, the small changes that I can make that are going to give me the biggest return on investment? And I do those small changes first. And once I have those small changes dealt with, then I can start dealing with the other things. Making sense?
Talking about, some of the top aliens, the term is called behavioral economics. I put in a minimal amount to get the maximum return. It's like you call a jackpot and you have like let's say a handful of treats or whatever, and you give the dog that handful versus just one, we'll call it a jackpot. He goes, nope, that's a waste of resource. You just wasted 10 pieces of food because they ate 10 pieces as fast as they ate the one piece. A jackpot is a prolonged period of delivery of that reward item, which is abnormal. And a jackpot is for a significant leap in performance that was unexpected. And that's what you get exactly what he's talking about. The minimal amount you put in with a maximum buy-in and effort that comes out the other side. So the decoy work, I'm going to use his side stuff now. If I can just do a little bit of movement and I got that dog's attention, I didn't have to do all this hooping or hollering. I didn't do all that crazy shit. I felt the dog got to react, and his reaction caused me to do something.
I know some of you guys, as a decoy, start crick walking in front of the dog so they bite you.
Yeah.
But absolutely, man. We want minimum input, maximum output. And it's all facets of dog training, canine behavior. So it's just a problem-solving principle. So when you're addressing problems, look at them like that, right? I say, like, people will say, well, you know, my dog doesn't know how to sit, pet dog people. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And they're like, oh, also, like, it's bit my kid's face 4 times. What the fuck are we talking about sitting right now? You know what I mean? So don't be that guy. All right, have you guys heard of Occam's razor? No?
Yeah.
Yes? Awesome. So it's actually a scientific philosophy of when you're dealing with certain phenomena that you need to take the most, or start with the most basic explanation for it first, right? So following Occam's razor, I have a rental car outside right now, and let's say that I go outside and my rental car is gone. Well, not following Occam's razor, I would run into here in a panic and say, guys, the aliens took my car. What would you guys think? That's fucked up, bro. You're supposed to say, well, we would think he's not following Occam's razor. No, you would think I'm nuts, right? Following Occam's razor, maybe that is the case. Maybe aliens finally came down and they chose to come here and take my car specifically. But before we get there, we have to first go through the most reasonable explanations and disprove those. Make sense? We have to say first, hey, did Cameron borrow Mike's car to go to the store? And we say, no, it wasn't Cameron. Cameron's here. Did Ricky did? No, it wasn't Ricky. Everyone's like, maybe someone stole it. Okay, no, we figure out no one stole it. And work our way through all the reasonable things before the most reasonable explanation is aliens. Make sense? Why is that relevant to us with dog training?
Complicated problem.
Oh, bro, we're good, bro. We're really good at making some shit up on the fly, right? We hear all this. You hear it in the detection world, nonstop. Oh no, my dog missed that odor. Oh, you know what my favorite one is? We're tracking, and I didn't find the guy at the track. Why didn't you find him?
You got in a car.
Got in a fucking car and left. How do you know that, bro? Yeah, we get, then camera footage comes out, you're tracking the wrong goddamn way. The guy went that way. So following Occam's razor, we need to be able to, like, let's work our way through. Maybe we want to know in our tracking situation that the guy got in the car, right? Well, what does that look like in training to us? How many tracks have we set up and ran where at the end of the track, the person got in a car and left? What does my dog's behavior look like when that happens? Now we're getting a little bit closer to following Occam's razor if we have those training things put in. Does that make sense? Yeah? Awesome. All right, and then we get to a big one, genetics. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but there are also some problems that aren't worth solving, right? If no amount of training, I'll give you an example. Anyone have like a pit bull as a pet in here? Yeah, like a real pit bull or like a bully? Okay, does he like other dogs? Yeah, so outlier. But most, like if you get a game bred pit bull that for its whole generation, the ones that have survived have been the ones that have been fighting other dogs and willing to fight and go, and then you come to me and say, hey, my dog is really dog aggressive, it's killed 6 dogs already, but I really want to take it to the dog park. Bro, there's some problems that no amount of training is going to fix that problem. Like I may be able to suppress the dog's attitude when he sees the other dogs. That doesn't change what his desires are. Does that make sense? In that situation, you could be great 99% of the time, just 1% of the time, now there's another dead dog. Making sense? That's applicable to us in the police dog world because what? No amount of training is going to make a coward not a coward. You guys probably work with a few, right? Yeah. No one wants to shake their head, but I know. But like no amount of training is going to change that in the person or the dog. So there's certain things that we have to say, hey, this problem is not going to be, we're not going to be able to solve. And it is a hard thing to deal with, particularly if it's a situation where you're stuck with the dog that you're stuck with. That kind of sucks. But I equate it to like, hey, I'm sure everyone here when they go to work, you guys carry a gun. Yeah? Not the Abercrombie & Fitch model. You can't conceal it when you don't have a shirt on. But would you go to work with a gun that shot sometimes? Like, it might work depending on what the weather's like, and no, it sounds silly, right? So that's how I look at the dogs. Like ultimately, they're living, breathing creatures, but they're also a tool. And there are some times where this is just not the right job for that dog. That make sense? Questions about that? No? All right, I'm gonna kind of just, oh, it's a good slide. I had to trade off my K9 edging, but I put this one in. I got 99 problems, but out ain't one. All right. So some of the challenges in Bitework are what? Bite mechanics. control and capping, and then some safety concerns, right? I'm gonna show you really quick. So we'll talk really quick about bite mechanics. I talked with a group of people yesterday. I told them that there's a dog that I have, is a retired police dog that ate 28 grams of meth. This is the dog. Full idiot. So his biting style is very, like, he wants to pull a lot, right? Two things that matter. The best biting, the way that you're gonna get the best bite mechanics ever is through no training and is through genetic selection, how that dog bites. That being said, when we get dogs that don't have the best bite mechanics, there are things that we can do that can adjust it a little bit, but so we're gonna work on some bite mechanic stuff here. We're using a leather cover on the pillow. What I'm doing is I'm sliding that pillow, that leather out of his mouth, and then he wants to maintain the leather. So then I release back pressure and he gets full again. But the leather's slick, so I can work it out of his mouth again. What we're trying to do is work on kind of reflexive muscle memories on his behalf. So when he gets something, push it. See it? Questions about that? Questions about that? Make sense? So I'm removing it from his mouth. It's a hard object for him to maintain a grip on, so he's consistently trying to get after it again, get after it. Because if I get it out of his mouth and it gets away, what quadrant of operant conditioning is that?
Negative punishment.
Negative punishment, right? He just lost the rabbit escaped. So we're hey, and when I'm doing that, I'm reminding, hey, negative punishment's here, you're about to lose it. And he says, oh, fuck no. And wants to punch in again. Making sense? Awesome. So this one I think I explained in the video. Alright, so you'll watch me. I'm going to kind of hold the e-collar up so you can see what I'm doing with it. See here. Before he gets his bite, I'm going to tap, 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 bite. The back pressure's on. There's no tapping, no e-collar string right now. When I'm ready from the counter, notice a ton of back pressure. When I'm ready from the counter, he wants to counter. Tap, 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 tap. Pull, he counters. As he counters, that e-collar stim stops. Again, there's no e-collar stim right now. When I'm making the choice to release back pressure, okay, tap, 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 tap. Counter, it stops. So we're negatively reinforcing that countering behavior, right? And negative reinforcement means that we're creating a behavior in the dog. So tap, 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 tap. As he counters, it stops. Shut up. Does that make sense? So again, along the lines of what Ricky was talking about yesterday, the e-collar could be a really valuable tool for us. It doesn't just have to be punitive. We can use it to activate behaviors as well. So making that, it was a low level stim. It wasn't really high. Low enough where he's feeling it, but not enough where he's like flinching to it. He can feel it. That e-collar comes on. It's a signal for him to punch in. E-collar comes on, punch in. Making sense? Questions about that? No? So one of the other reasons why I think sometimes we have failed engagements is the sight picture for the dog, right? Usually they get so used to seeing the big, bulky, puffy equipment. Do you guys use like red man suits in your like use of force training without the dogs? You know what I'm talking about? Beat each other up kind of shit. Well, if you guys are going into a scenario, a use of force day, and you walk in a room and there's 3 people without the red man suit on and 1 guy with the red man suit on, do you care how the scenario pans out, or you just automatically assume, well, I'm going hands-on with this guy, right? That's how I look at like visual bite equipment to a lot of dogs. So there's a drill that we have that I like to do with a Dog Armor Pro.
Right there! Right there! Right there! Right there!
There's a suited decoy standing right there. And almost passive decoy sitting on the floor with a Dog Armor Pro on.
Yep. do one more counter. All right.
So Georgia verbal out.
You got right there.
Anyone taking bites on the dog armor verbal? No, it's the fucking first version of it.
You can take him off. Yeah, fuck this. You gotta say eggplant before he takes it off. Eggplant, pineapple juice!
Yeah, right there, you got it.
All right. Also, I am a big fan of muzzle work. Not all muzzle work is created equal. I think there's a shit ton of homework that has to go into getting the most benefits from the muzzle. And I truly want the dogs to be muzzle neutral. If you put the muzzle on the dog and they assume that they're going to do bite work activities, you might as well just have a suited decoy there. Make sense? There's a whole course you could do just on muzzle stuff. I don't believe in tricking the dog, like slipping the muzzle off and letting them bite. So what we did there was there's a suspect down that kind of alleyway. We had 2 people pop out after they sent the dog, and then the handlers needed to make a choice of either recalling your dog back to you or letting the dog continue on and get past them. And again, just trying to show them different pictures and fading out as much equipment as possible. Pretty cool little Seacan village. It's a long video, but the dog ends up fucking muzzle fighting at the end. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares?
Oh, there you are. Oh, my dick.
All right, drive capping, really quick. You guys know what drive capping is? Yes? What is it? No? Alright, I don't fucking know what it is either. I just heard people talk about it.
The term I heard you're used in dog training frequently, so I just repeat it.
So to me, what drive capping is a little bit different than, in my opinion, just like your nonchalant obedience. To me, I think it needs we want to take that state of arousal that the dog may have at the door threshold and bottle it all up and stop the leaking, stop them being vocal, stop them whining, stop them shaking out of position, put all of that energy into an obedience behavior, and then with the ability to release them and explode and take that energy and that state of arousal to the item or to the person or whatever it may be. Does that make sense? So not just a regular down, but a down with the anticipation of something exciting, something arousing. Making sense? So I'll show you a quick video, some basic introduction. This dog has never done. If he barks, let him go, let him go, let him go. Sorry, if he barks, minimally intrusive, like we're trying not to use a shit ton of corrections here. He does have a dominant dog on, but the goal is for the dog to kind of figure out on their own. The way to get to that tug is to sit and bottle that up for a split second. I don't ask for really long duration in the beginning, and I don't get them to a really high state of arousal. I want to work my way to a really high state of arousal, and then duration.
Oh, buddy. Yeah.
So he's a very leaky German Shepherd. They just want to talk all the time like my ex. Adding more animation now, trying to get him to a higher state of arousal. And now the tongue is visible to him, it's not tucked away. Makes the choice.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So now, that last one, I left the tongue visible. Shut up. This guy's saying the same shit I'm saying. Okay, so I thought I had the same shirt on. But if we started with that first high state, like that state of arousal to begin with, it would have been a lot less clear to the dog because he would have been so wound up. Make sense? And now, again, more like the higher states of arousal. And shut the fuck up. Agitating him a little bit with it. All right. The other thing when we talked about prevention, I raise puppies up, and I know that capping that drive can be an issue in the future if we just start introducing it when they're older. Control, team movement, all of that stuff. A lot of the dogs, we do end up getting integrated into TAC teams. So I'll show you a little bit of the drills that we do with them early on. They really like food. They do like bite work, but I get a more clear thought from them when they're in food mentality. I can communicate with them a little bit better. So we start this drill with food and then progress to higher states of arousal. So really young puppies, we get them used to bumping into cops wearing uniform and not in the state of, when I run in this building, I just tag whoever is around. So it becomes kind of a normal picture for them by the time they get to the point of going on the road and integrating with teams. Again, we start the problem, there's not really any searching. I'm right out in front of the puppy. They can see me if they're making good progress, then I'll get further into the building where they have to kind of get further in as well, and I'm out of sight. But I start really close. See them visual, get them used to officers walking in front. Try to get them down to a higher state of arousal. I'm still using food, but building them up a little bit more, teasing them, and out of sight. I tell the handlers and the cover guys to kind of block up in the doorway so the dogs have to push through them.
Did you give me like as the handler, you do this drill and then they give them like 0 commands, just like go in the building?
Yeah, they don't like at this point commands don't mean shit to them. Like they see me with food. A lot of times, like with the older ones, maybe I'll throw some pieces of food in the bowl in front of them at the door. They eat a couple of pieces of kibble. Then I take it into the building, drop it. But eventually, we start making the K9 announcements in that context. So it doesn't necessarily mean like super high state of arousal run into the building. They're kind of just used to that picture. Does that make sense? Separately, we work on bite work. Separately, we work on the searching skills. And then when they're proficient in each of those profiles, then we start blending them together. Make sense? So example of just some of our pet training logs that we use. You guys have any questions for me about anything so far? No? Again, I think it's super important that we track data. Something as simple as we get people that's like, hey, my dog's tracking is doing really well, but our control work is shit. And then I'm like, okay, well, in the last month, you did 25 sessions of tracking and 2 sessions of control work. That makes, so sometimes it's the problem's as simple as that, like just amount of reps. Usually we like to do the things that are fun for us and our dog. People often avoid those areas where they struggle with their dog because it sucks, right? But so much learning happens in the struggle. If we avoid the struggle, we also avoid learning. Making sense? All right, in conclusion, these are also some questions that I ask. What's the problem? Who is there when the problem occurs? So the announcements at the door threshold, maybe it only happens when cover officers are there as well, right? What is the problem? Dog losing their shit at the door threshold. When does it occur? Sometimes this is an important question. Does it occur in the evening shifts? Does it occur when you're on day shifts? Does it occur, so that when can matter. Where? At the door thresholds. Why? That's our cause. Sometimes we know the cause, sometimes we don't. And then how? What does how mean? How did your dog start chewing the baseboards? Because I fucking let it. Right? All right, recap. Identifying the problem. If anyone wants the slides as well, I'll give you my email. Just shoot me an email. The problem is I need to figure out how to get the videos to be included in that. So we'll get over that, but I at least can shoot you just the picture formats over.
Do you have them on YouTube, your videos?
Some of them are, not all of them. So again, just recap. We want to identify the problem. What's step 0? Prevention, all right. Step 1, we want to identify the problem. Step 2, we're going to try to find the cause. Step 3, create a plan. 4, implement the plan. And 5, measure the progress. Or lack of. Sound good? Questions? Yes, no, maybe so you guys just want to eat lunch, eh? All right, well, that's that for the presentation. Don't ask me questions when I got a sandwich in my mouth. Oh, sorry. The QR code is actually not to anything that great for you, but it is for me. It's a Google review page, so.